Reacting acids with metal oxides. Page 73. The metal magnesium reacts with dilute sulfuric acid. The metal copper doesn't. So they're saying that the magnesium reacts with the dilute sulfuric acid. However, copper doesn't react with sulfuric acid. Both magnesium oxide and copper oxide react similarly with acids. So when copper is with metal, it doesn't react with sulfuric acid. But when it's copper oxide, it does react with the acid. Let's start talking about reacting dilute sulfuric acid with copper oxide. The black powder, which is the copper oxide, will produce a black solution when it's placed with the dilute sulfuric acid. So copper oxide is a black powder. When it reacts with the dilute sulfuric acid, it will produce a blue-colored solution, which is the copper sulfate. The reaction is copper oxide plus sulfuric acid reacts to give copper sulfate plus water. A summary equation for acids and metal oxides. So the summary equation usually is metal oxide plus acid reacts to give salt plus water. So if we go back, copper sulfate is the salt here, and water is always produced. The ionic equation for an acid-metal oxide reaction. We'll look at the big equation at first. We remove the spectator ions to be left with this equation, which is O2 minus plus 2H plus reacts to give H2O. This is an example of neutralization reaction. Neutralization reaction is the reaction between an acid and a base to produce a neutral solution, which is water. We talk about neutralization reaction in the next video. So let's talk about reacting dilute sulfuric acid with copper oxide on page 73, and the equations are found on page 74. Reacting acids with metal oxides. The first example is reacting dilute sulfuric acid with copper oxide. So we'll see the reaction between sulfuric acid and copper oxide. A black powder reacts with hot dilute sulfuric acid to produce a blue solution of copper sulfate. So the black powder, which is the copper oxide, reacts with dilute sulfuric acid. This is the black powder, the copper oxide. It reacts with dilute sulfuric acid to produce a blue-colored solution, the copper sulfate solution. The copper oxide reacts with dilute sulfuric acid to give copper sulfate. So the equation is copper oxide, CuO, plus sulfuric acid, H2SO4, reacts to give copper sulfate, CuSO4, plus water. Copper sulfate here is the salt. So this is the reaction between copper oxide and dilute sulfuric acid. A summary equation for acids and metal oxides. So we have a summary equation for the reactions between acids and metal oxides, which is that a metal oxide reacts with an acid to produce salt plus water. In the previous reaction, we had a metal plus an acid which gave a salt. The salt was copper sulfate plus, of course, water. So the equation that must be studied very well is the summary equation: metal oxide plus acid reacts to give salt plus water.